Well, hey guys, it's finally Friday today, and I've been spending some time this week with 6 students studying ancient Greek, reading Jonathan Harker's journals, and in the cold, freezing Russian winter in 1812, which marked the downfall of Napoleon. To be honest, at this point, my enthusiasm for this book has pretty much waned, and I just want to be done with this book as soon as possible. I am now on page 1210, so I've got 2 more pages left before I get to the epilogue, and then I'll be done with this entire book. So yeah, in this video I just want to talk about these 2 books, and let's first talk about One Piece. So One Piece is about some big events in the history and the small lives that inhabit those events. There are no main characters, but you get this interlocking web of relationships. Real historical figures mix and mingle with fictional characters, and I would say the most important fictional characters are Prince Andrei, Pierre and Natasha. My first impression of this book is that it's surprisingly accessible, but it's just too long and I got distracted by other books. And most of the time it's, characters interacting with each other and everything is so well connected. But then after book 3, Tolstoy often interrupts the narrative and speaks directly to the reader. He presents you with little theses here and there, which are grand interrogations into wars, philosophy, psychology, history. He poses questions like, why do wars start? What are great battlefield tactics? You may not care about battlefield tactics like me, but the way Tolstoy writes it, he is gonna make you care. He also talks about history at great length and what is wrong with what the historian said. For example, history is a continuous thing, and in the study of history, you can't just take a single event out and study it in isolation and conclude that this is the cause, these are the consequences, because everything is in some sense predestined. Say you want to study A, then you need to go back to B. But if you go back to B, then you also need to know about C, D, E. In other words, because of B, C, D, E, A has to happen. So things occur because they have to occur. You can't just assign, a cause to an event and say that is a cause, because there's never one single cause of that event. Everything is connected. It's like domino tiles. A Russian peasant may just be as important as a colonel. And to illustrate this point, Tolstoy even goes so far as to explain a little calculus, which as a former math student, I found it so exhilarating to read. Only by taking an infinitesimally small unit for observation, the differential of history, that is, individual tendencies of men, and attaining to the art of integrating them, that is, finding the sum of these infinitesimals, can we hope to arrive at the laws of history. Although I didn't study pure maths, but I love real analysis, it's one of my favorite subjects. Here's another great quote on fatalism, because Tolstoy himself is uncompromisingly a fatalist. There are 2 sides to the life of every man: his individual life, which is the more free, the more abstract its interests, and his elemental swarm life, in which he inevitably obeys laws laid down for him. Man lives consciously for himself, but is an unconscious instrument in the attainment of the historic, universal aims of humanity. The deed done is irrevocable, and its result, coinciding in time with the actions of millions of other men, assumes an historic significance. The higher man stands on the social ladder, the more people he is connected with, and the more power he has over others, the more evident is the predestination and inevitability of his every action. The Tsar's heart is in the hands of the Lord. A Tsar is history's slave. History, that is, the unconscious, general swarm life of mankind, uses every moment of the life of rulers as a tool for its own purposes. As I said, there are 3 most important fictional characters, and among the 3, Prince Andrei is my favorite. He is that kind of person who is constantly searching for something, never passive, and always frustrated with his lot. At first, he comes across as arrogant, cynical, cold-blooded, and glory-seeking. He is just a bit like Mr. Darcy. He is, in my opinion, the Russian version of Mr. Darcy. But deep down, he is this conflicted young soul. He always ponders the meanings behind wars, love, and death. I feel like he is having an existential crisis, and also he tries so many different things like going overseas, but none of them really work. He goes through depression, he falls in love, he fights, he crashes, he stands up and is prepared to fight again. I honestly don't know why he has to suffer so much, why? What is Tolstoy doing with this character? But he goes through tremendous character development for sure. He is certainly not a likable character, but I find the things he goes through, being lost, being hopeless about life, are very relatable, and for that reason he is really close to my heart. It's a week later and I've got some more thoughts on Andrei and Pierre, because it's quite interesting to see that the 2 are good friends given how different they are. Pierre represents emotion and Andrei represents pure reason. He is very detached from emotions, his family and the society, because he wants to connect to something superior and glorious. He wants to distinguish himself in wars, whereas Pierre is very, impulsive, naive, but very sincere and just pure. At the beginning, he's barely able to control himself or think about the consequences of his actions. And he is really everything carnal and physical, because we are told how much he eats, how much he drinks, his weight, his physique, and his sexual desires. Whereas Andrei tries to get away from those things as far away as possible. He is always lost in a spiritual sense, always hankering after something, and always tries to, intellectualize everything he experiences. The way he lives reminds me of a quote by Albert Camus, who wrote The Outsider, and he said, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you're looking for the meaning of life." I just feel so sorry for Prince Andrei, because he doesn't know that happiness can be found in things much simpler and more mundane than whatever glory is to him. And after reading the first part of the epilogue, I think what Tolstoy is trying to tell us is to just live a simple life and to have unconditional love for others. And sometimes you have to surrender yourself to fate, and that's what life is. I was really miserable when I was reading his part, because he thinks too much and too deeply and overcomplicates matters. And I wanted him to be less hesitant. And when he finally realizes what he wants and, what he wants for life, what love really is to him, it's too late, By the way, I didn't read One Piece at all this week, because the second part of the epilogue is so boring. He's just repeating what he said again and again in the epilogue. Oh my god. So one of my favorite parts of the book, without giving anything away, is where Pierre protects the French officer from a drunkard who is about to shoot him. This happened after the Russian army had lost the Battle of Borodino and Moscow was occupied by the French army and Napoleon himself. Most of the Russians fled Moscow, but Pierre managed to find a place, and he decided to stay in Moscow and hide his identity for a certain reason, which I won't say because of spoilers. So the French officer goes into the house where Pierre hides, and Pierre refuses to speak to him at first and pretends that he doesn't know French, because only the members of gentry speak French. But after pushing the drunkard away, Pierre runs up to the officer and asks him in French if he's alright. Then the officer extends the hand of friendship to him, and he says, "A Frenchman or Russian prince incognito, I owe my life to you and offer you my friendship. A Frenchman never forgets either an insult or a service. I offer you my friendship. That is all I can say." I was particularly moved by this part because this is, by the way, Book 3, Part 3, Chapter 28 and 29. Because if you recall what's going on outside the house in the city of Moscow, most Russians ran for their lives before the arrival of French, who are now wreaking havoc on the streets and in every house and shop, and looting everything they deem valuable. But in this house, we are watching poor Pierre become friendly with his enemy officer. The French officer tells Pierre about his entire life, and Pierre is moved, and he also opens up and tells him that he once was an illegitimate son of someone. He also shares his most private and intimate thoughts regarding a certain person whom I won't tell because of spoilers. The chapter where the two are conversing is long, and it tells you how close the two have become and that they are no longer on their guard because they both managed to see the humanity in their enemies. I think it is such a wonderful and peaceful moment in the middle of the wars. The Secret History. My first impression of The Secret History after reading only the first 30 pages is that it oozes everything good, pretentious, evil, bewitching, intoxicating about dark academia. I can totally feel it. Even before I finished chapter 1, I was stunned by Donata's writing. There's something intoxicating about this book. There are some lines which are so beautifully written, and I was dazzled and couldn't take my eyes off them. Let me read you something. It's a very Greek idea and a very profound one. Beauty is terror. What we call beautiful, we quiver before it. And what could be more terrifying and beautiful to souls like the Greeks or our own than to lose control completely, to throw off the chains of being for an instant, to shatter the accident of our mortal selves? One is quite capable, of course, of working out these destructive passions in more vulgar and less efficient ways. But how glorious to release them in a single burst, to sing, to scream, to dance barefoot in the woods in the dead of night, with no more awareness of mortality than an animal. These are powerful mysteries, the bellowing of bulls, springs of honey bubbling from the ground. If we are strong enough in our souls, we can rip away the veil and look that naked, terrible beauty right in the face. Let God consume us, devour us, unstring our bones, then spit us out, reborn. So that is something said by their Greek instructor or professor called Julian, and I feel like he gives off Lord Henry vibes. And the main character, who just transferred to that Greek major or program or whatever it is, he says, "After class, I wandered downstairs in a dream, my head spinning, but acutely, achingly conscious that I was alive and young on a beautiful day." Just by reading those lines in the first chapter and how the characters carry themselves, what they say, what they do, what they wear, I can already see how this book has inspired the entire dark academia genre. But ironically, this book criticizes dark academia because it reveals the dark side of academia. You know, like the elitism associated with it. I mean, this group of students studying ancient Greek, apart from the main character, are very cut off from the real world. And one of them doesn't even know that men have walked on the moon. By the way, this book, if you don't know, is about one of the students studying ancient Greek, Richard, who reflects upon the situation that led to the murder of their friend Bunny. The murder is revealed at the very beginning on page 1, and at first I quite liked Bunny, to be honest. He is very amiable at the beginning, and he is the first one who welcomes the main character to their very exclusive group. But then we get to see the nasty part of his personality. But still, I was thinking, because, you know, the story is told from the main character's perspective, you know, he is trying to make the murder sound justifiable, so that's why I don't think he is a reliable narrator. I still think Bunny is like the endearing child of their group despite the murder. And the first time I read how he looked like, I immediately pictured River Phoenix. He is Bunny. Because this book is about, you know, a bunch of students learning Greek, so obviously language is one of the themes. And Julian, the Greek instructor, once said that one's thought patterns become different when forced into the confines of a rigid and unfamiliar tongue. Certain common ideas become inexpressible, other previously undreamt of ones spring to life, finding miraculous new expressions. I mean, there's nothing so groundbreaking about what he said, but I think it's so well put. And then Henry, he's like this polyglot, and he is Julian's favorite student. He is easily the character that I admire the most in this book because of his knowledge and his mannerism. And also, he says this to the main character after the murder of Bunny, because the main character is really worried. When you're worried about something, have you ever tried thinking in a different language? It slows you down, keeps your thought from running wild. I was reading this part at 2 a.m. I was about to doze off, and this just got me so excited. I was like, that's really good advice. I should really try it out sometime. Yeah, I need to do some reading, and I hope I can finish at least 1 or 2 books over the weekend, and then I can talk to you about the 23 books that I want to read in 2023. I've just reached page 584 and I've got 40 more pages to go before I finish the book, and I'm still reading chapter 8, and this chapter is super long. It starts on page 475 and it ends on 606. So by the end of chapter 7, both Bunny's burial and funeral are over, and it seems that the characters are just going to return to their previous life. But of course no, so many things have been revealed in chapter 8, and there's just too much information. Oh my god, I devoured like 150 pages of the book just now, and I feel like I was out of breath. Like, just too many things have happened, and I was so shocked by what had happened between the twins, between Charles and Henry, between Francis and Charles. And also we get to see the dark and evil side of Henry. And yesterday I was saying I admired Henry, and now I just don't think so. I was kind of disappointed in him. I mean, because the story is told from Richard's perspective, and I think he's an example of unreliable narrator, so the way I view the characters is heavily influenced by his feelings towards them. The part that struck me the most is where the characters speak in Greek when they are talking about the murder of their friend, so that people won't be able to understand them. Because when we learn foreign language, it's because we want to go on trips, we want to be able to communicate with other people. But these students are doing the exact opposite. They don't want to be understood. And I think it fits in so well with what the book is trying to criticize, which is the elitism associated with classical studies. For example, the opportunity to study Greek should be open to all students at the university as long as they are willing to study it and they meet the prerequisites. But the teacher, Julian, only accepts 5 students and he conducts his selection on a more personal rather than academic basis. And all the classes they take are taught by Julian, so they are very cut off from the rest of campus, if not the rest of the world. And I think that's the real dark side of academia, because this group of students are very secretive and the course they take is very exclusive. And I think the title, The Secret History, is really apt. There's a French instructor at the university who criticizes Julian and says that he will never be a scholar of the very first rate. And he says that there's nothing wrong with the love of beauty, but beauty, unless she is wed to something more meaningful, is always superficial. It is not that Julian chooses solely to concentrate on certain exalted things. It is that he chooses to ignore others equally as important. I just finished The Secret History and I am so dejected right now. I nearly cried at the end. I feel so sorry for the 6 main characters. Although they are all very selfish and insufferable, I can't help but feel bad for what they got at the end. No one deserved what they got. No one was happy. At the same time, I know they had done it all to themselves. Oh my god, thank you Donald Trump for this masterpiece. Okay, I'm just going to tell you the 23 books that I'm going to read this year, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I haven't read them yet. The first 2 books are The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go, both by Kazuo Ishiguro. I was going to get the US edition because I like the covers, but then I thought, wouldn't it be great to complete the entire, rainbow stack from Faber and Faber, which is the UK edition. I mean, I already have 4, so I've got 5 more to go. Oh, I also forgot, The Secret History is actually one of them, so I already finished 1. And then I have Interview with a Vampire, The House in the Cerulean Sea, Circe, Piranesi, The Year of Magical Thinking, and this is the only non-fiction on my 2023 TBR list. And I finally got Dune. I really like the film. I went to see it twice, and I know the second one is going to come out this year, so I want to read the first one, at least get the first one done, and I'll see if I've got time to read the second one this year before I go to see the film. And then You and Me on Vacation, or People We Meet on Vacation, because I want to read a romance and also want to read some YA, so 6 of Crows. And then Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club. So that's 12 of them, and the remaining ones are all classics. Dracula, Don Quixote, and I also recommend this edition, which is translated by Edith Grossman, because I heard from many people that his rendering of the humor in the book is the best. 10 Days Night by Scott Fitzgerald. And then I've got a Japanese book, which is Confessions of a Mask. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I planned to read this one last year, but I didn't get to do that, so I do hope I finish it this year. Next 3 books are all by Jane Austen. Northanger Abbey, Mansfield Park, Sense and Sensibility. Last but not least, the first volume of the longest novel in the world, Remembrance of Things Past, or In Search of Lost Time. This one's more than 1,000 pages long, and I'm a bit scared, to be honest. I'm planning to read this one near the end of the year, so let me know if you want to read along with me.